Hello. Is that yeah, the sound looks good. Okay. I usually talk a little bit loud anyways. All right. All right. Let's update the titles so everybody knows they'd like what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to give just a little bit of time for people to settle in. Get ready. We have a good week this week. I think there's some interesting things to go over. Um, yeah, I have a couple articles that were interesting. We have some new, some decent changes. Nothing like mind blowing that happened this week, but some decent changes that came in through the week to some cloud stuff. Um, yeah, and so yeah, we had the big players had some interesting releases that I thought were worthy of talking about. We have a little bit of open source releases that are coming out. So yeah, we'll talk about those. We'll talk about those in just a second. You know what we could do? We could get our subscriber thing running. So what I really want to do for this show is basically I want to get a stream starting soon, so that it gives some people the time for people to accumulate because we are going over the news. I feel like then some people miss the beginning part and whatnot. So I do want to do that. So maybe there's something we could do at the beginning to give time for people to accumulate for it. So we'll have to think about that, how we want to do that. Let's see. What was I going to do? Oh, we have our Twitch alerts to get running. So they're running. If you'd like to see the development of that, that's some of the stuff that I do when on stream. Yeah. All right. So that's running. So if there's a new follower, we'll have a fun little story about the follower. We'll read their story. All right. Well, I guess I will go ahead and get started. All right, let's start out with some security. So we're gonna start out with some security. I'm gonna try to cover what you guys want to see, what you guys want to hear. If you see something in any one of these sections, go ahead and post the link. You can post it in the Discord, and I keep pretty up on all of those things. So you know, let me know if there's something you guys would like to see in one of these sections. If you give it to me ahead of time, I'll actually, try to read it and understand what I think about it beforehand and give an overview. If, on the other hand, you give it to me as we're doing it, I might just go ahead and read it and react to it. So if you find something in with regards to the cloud providers, open source, Kubernetes, any of those things, feel free to drop it in. All right, let's get started. The first one, which seems to be like, I don't know, I'm going to say it's quarterly where we get one of these. Maybe it's not quite quarterly, but it feels quarterly. We have another Microsoft Outlook elevation of privilege vulnerability. These are very critical. You can elevate your privileges, and it's a 9.8. It's a 9.8. So if you have some of these, it is patched. So you can go ahead and update it. But let's move on to something that we've talked about a little bit more. I saw a couple articles calling out Bitwarden, and this was the only article that I found that actually had the proper update. So, Bitwarden has a known exploit. It's not actually an exploit. It's actually that other websites could be exploited. And so the thing is, you should never have your password autofill in iframes effectively, because iframes could be like an ad that has been, or an ad provider that has been compromised. And you don't want it to just autofill your passwords and usernames in those things. So it's not really an exploit of Bitwarden, more that iframes just aren't safe to do. Now, the thing is, Bitwarden has updated, has released a fix for them. So that's good. It has existed. My general thought here is you should never use autofill, to be honest. So Bitwarden's new way of handling this is that they will tell you if it's not a trusted domain. So like google.com is a trusted domain, and they have, I don't know, maybe 50 other trusted domains. And if it's not from one of those, it will throw up a warning that says, hey, we shouldn't autofill this, but you can click a button and say, go ahead and autofill it. I would generally say, don't autofill iframes, and just disable it. You can, and I think that is the best way to do it. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I know that I think Bitwarden, 1Password and Bitwarden are my two favorite. I think that if you're going to use a password manager, but I like to keep up on this because if I do give that recommendation, I want to know to the best of my ability that Bitwarden is actually good and good to use. So, anyways, that was the thing that I noticed. And it seems to still be good to use. That's going to be my next update. So, anyways, they're coming to industry standards. I wish that they would just disable it always, but it's really a struggle, and I get that because a lot of the times they're trying to make it as easy for people to use because that helps adoption, and the thought is they're safer adopting this than not, and I would generally say that's generally true. So I think that's why they try to make it as easy to use, which means autofilling on more things, but really, you can't do that. All right, let's jump into the cloud. I'm going to start this cloud off with not one of the big major players. I'm going to start out with a company that I also like. I have never used any of their products. Let me start from there. I say I like because they release a lot of good stuff out there, and I have used one of their projects, Project Falco. So I have, and that's fantastic. It's an open source project. Absolutely love it. But they also release some really good content around that, and seem to be a pretty good company on the up and up. Again, never had business dealings with them, so I can't exactly say, but from what I've seen, seems pretty good. This is a blog article that I thought was pretty well done. I don't agree with it completely, but it's pretty good. Why companies still struggle with least privilege in cloud. And I'm going to give you the TLDR because it's hard. Because it's hard. That's why. Least privilege is hard. And one thing that makes it hard is if you actually adopt least privilege, if your privileges change, your least privileges have to change as well. So it gets very hard. One second, I just have to message my wife really quickly. Okay, so this is what makes least privilege really hard, but it's also really important. There's a couple companies that help with least privilege. Sysdig is one of those. One of the really true, you know, drivers of it is a Cloudflare, another company that I like. And so, yeah, why companies still struggle with least privilege. This is a good article. It's a good one to read, especially if you're interested in least privilege. So I thought this was a good crossover from the clouds and security. So yeah, this is I don't know if this is IAM vulnerability hygiene rating. I don't know if this is true. I would have guessed that more companies were in these portions here, and not these. So that actually impresses me. But yeah. All right, we'll just jump on to Google Cloud. I think these were kind of interesting. So we'll look at this and let's see what they've done. All right, the biggest thing that I want to call out is building the most open and innovative AI ecosystem. I don't know that it's the most open. I think that's a pretty bold claim on their part, but they have released quite a bit of new stuff around AI that we're going to cover in just a second. But yeah, so I think that's their biggest news this week. Other than this is more of an advertisement than anything else. There is the general availability. Understand and trust your data with Dataplex data lineage. Again, a little bit more of a advertisement than anything. And again, just another thing about Spanner. But let's jump on to what they've released here. Now they have two blog articles. I'm going to post these in chat here for you all. And this one is the next generation for AI, generation of AI for developers and Google Workspaces. So basically, this and in relation to this as well with Palm API for MakerSuite are there two big AI announcements. So I think honestly this year you're going to see a lot around AIs in the cloud. So we obviously know that Microsoft's solution is to open API, OpenAI. And this is, Palm is Google's solution to OpenAI and their generative text-based chatbot. So basically, Google has started putting these APIs out there for you to start using. I don't know if our Twitch alerts that are currently running should start using some different ones. Maybe we could have a couple different generations and see. Not sure. If you are interested in that, join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're working on them. Maybe some on Saturday. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so this is interesting. They seem to release quite a bit. So there was not just Palm. So there is Palm, but there's the whole Maker Suite, which Maker Suite is basically their generative AIs. So whether that is text or image or sound, that is all around their Maker Suite. And then yeah, this AI, this around Palm is an approachable way to explore, prototype with generative AI applications. So yeah, these are interesting. Again, we'll have to see. I think all of these just link back to themselves. we'll have to see how this develops and goes forward. Then we have AWS. AWS had a couple things that I found interesting. I was pretty excited because none of these had to do with AI or blockchain, which made it even more exciting. Amazon S3 simplifies private connectivity from on-premise networks. So this connection between on-premise and AWS 3, and we say on-premise, I think on-premise is misleading. It's usually your own data center, not on-premise. But these connections can be difficult, and yeah. So this is a refresher for that. And now they have several things that allow you to do this, like private link. But to get started with private DNS for S3, just create an inbound resolver endpoint for your VPC and point your on-premise resolver to it. Then go to the VPC. So this is helping with DNS. So private link doesn't really help with your DNS problems between those, and this is letting you deal with that. So I think this is pretty cool and a nice step for people that are trying to do some hybrid work. So if that's you, this seems to be a good shot for you. On that, we have Amazon Linux 2023. If you're building AMIs for Amazon, I generally recommend using Amazon Linux because Amazon Linux is designed to work with AWS's machines. It has all the right drivers. It's easy. It's the easy choice. You can do other choices, but you know that I like Ubuntu and Debian based systems. Those are the ones I'm most comfortable with, even though right now I'm on Arch. But I really do like to use the Amazon Linux. I think it's a pretty good standard to use. There is a couple points that I wanted to point out on the Amazon Linux. Let's look at security first. Amazon Linux 2023, which is long-term support, includes pre-configured security policies that make it easy for you to implement common industry guidelines. This right here is huge. This right here is huge. Before this, I know that I have had teams that have had to go through and implement industry best practice on their image. I kid you not. You take Amazon 2022, you build an AMI that's just the image, and you scan it, and it will fail the scanner. It will just fail a security scan based off of their base image. You'd have to go through and do some work to build an image that actually passed even their AWS inspector. Highly annoying to me. Highly annoying. I thought that this was pretty. Yeah. Anyways. So I think that I think this is pretty awesome. They also updated their operating system lifecycle. Amazon Linux major versions will be available every 2 years, so we can expect a new one in 2 years. Major releases, including new features and improvements in security and performance across the stack. Okay, so I think. Anyways, I think this is pretty good. So, anyways, Amazon 2023 will end of life in 2025. And you can kind of see their maintenance windows here. So this is the new release, the new Amazon 2025. 1 second. I stand corrected. Amazon Linux 2023 is going to be supported until, or the main distribution until 2025. But then it will have security maintenance and long-term support up to the end of 2028. But at the end of 2025, you'll get Amazon Linux 2025, which will go till past 2030. So this is their new life cycle that they've updated. It sounds pretty good. Now, like I said, this is based off of RPM. So you got the DNF and Yum. Well, I guess DNF now. I've only ever really used Yum, so I'm not familiar with DNF at this point. But I do know that that's the new one going forward. So, anyways. Yeah, go check it out. I'm excited. It sounds good. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about this. Biggest deal here. All right, Amazon Application Composer now generally available. We talked about this last week. I really thought it was cool, and so I'm stating it again. We're gonna have to one day build an app on AWS Composer, application composer, just to give it a shot. But I think it could be pretty cool. So this was a better blog article about it. So when they first released last week, it was a little bit more compressed on their general availability. This one goes into a lot more detail on it. And yeah, I guess I'll post the link just in case you're wanting it. It's there. It's there. I really think that this is going to be really big for small businesses. You're a small business, you're a small accounting firm, you're a small whatever. You either don't hire a full IT team or you hire a IT person. And this, I think, could really empower those people to move quickly and do big things. It's going to be more expensive to run than if you hired a big IT team or a lot of developers to do it. But guess what? You didn't have to. So it's actually cheaper if you don't count all the people that you didn't have to hire. So I think this can be really big. Now, I know that we've talked about whether Rust is really going to stick the distance. And the thing that Russell and I agreed on in the end was that it really came down to large companies adopting it. And this next one is just another example of AWS adopting it. I know that we've talked about Microsoft adopting it. We've talked about things like Firecracker and Bottle Rocket and Firecracker that were released by AWS using Rust. And here is just another thing, the inside story on Mount Point for Amazon S3, a high-performance open-source file client. So another great thing is it is open source. So you can go check it out here and give it a shot if you want. It's a cool project. I think that this is interesting, especially if it's working on the S3 API. It's also possible that you could use this with any S3 compliant API. I haven't tried that, and they don't actually state that they do. But if it is just using the S3 API, then you could possibly use this on anything. But what it does is it provides S3 mounted as a file system. So you could actually use it like a file system. So basically, here's the demo for it. Mount Point for Amazon S3. You can see here in Amazon, this is the S3. You can mount S3. And basically, you can list your stuff and you can see that they are doing du-h just on it and seeing the different folders and how much storage is in each one of those, or different paths as folders. And they can ls the different things. It's mounting S3 buckets as your file system. You can use them as your file system. Obviously, these people are using Crapple. Shame on them. But yeah, it seems to look like it works on Linux as well. So hopefully it does. So yeah, and it's under the MIT license, and it's all Rust. Although there is 1.2% of other. Really, shame on you. Shame on you. And that's it for AWS. That's it. That's absolutely it. All right, let's move on to Azure. There was a bunch of retirement things. Now, these are out in the future. So I don't know that you need to worry about them right now, but if you're using them, you should understand that in 2026 and 2025, there was a bunch of things. I only pulled out a few of them. None of them stood out. I don't use Azure right now, and so none of them were things that I classically use, and none of them stood out like things that my community would necessarily care about. So yeah, assigning alert trigger playbooks with Microsoft Sentinel and I'm not even going to say the word. I'm not even going to do it the pleasure of getting it pronounced properly. It's coming. It's getting retired. It's getting retired. Azure Batch Classic Compute Node communication model will be retired on 2026. Like I said, lots of retirements. This isn't even all of them. This is one that I thought this community might enjoy, or not enjoy. I don't know whether you'll enjoy it or not, but we're retiring cluster configuration with Flux v1 on the 24th of May, 2025. Now, this is not all bad. They are transitioning to GitOps extension for Kubernetes to move to Flux v2. Flux v2 is a huge improvement to Flux v1. Just a massive, massive, massive improvement. So this should be an exciting thing, not a bad thing at all. So absolutely give this a check. Give it a check. Give it a check. Write them a check. Use their service. Pay them. But go ahead, check it out also if you haven't used them. If you want my opinions between Flux and Argo CD, I do tend to lean towards Argo CD. But if you're looking for the simplest and you're only wanting to do things with a single Kubernetes cluster, which most people aren't these days, Flux, I think, is by far the simpler and easier to get started with. So I would recommend that in that case. If you're wanting easy, if you're wanting one single cluster, that type of thing, Flux is pretty solid. And then, of course, we have to have a little AI because we know that GCP had a little bit of AI. And now Microsoft has announced the next generation AI Copilot and Microsoft Power Apps that will transform low-code development. Now, I also read an article that was like the end of computer science. Microsoft has eliminated the developer job. That's not what this is. This is a low-code solution. You know how I feel about low-code solutions. They're fantastic for the people that can't, but they also have their own downfalls. I think this goes right along with this AWS Application Composer. I think that these here are going to be very useful for those small, maybe even medium businesses that aren't tech companies. I think they're going to be able to leverage these things with great effect. That being said, generally low code is kind of you get what you get and nothing else. So if that doesn't align exactly with your needs, you either have to just pay more because it doesn't quite work properly, and so you have to feed it more money to get it to do the things you need, or it doesn't really necessarily scale the way that you need it to scale, or anyways, that's my general thoughts on these things. So I'm going to watch how this goes. This is really it's really designed to help you do like those macros that you would normally do in the suites. It's cool, but I'll be watching it. And that's it for our big clouds. We did have something from GitHub. Two things from GitHub that we'll talk about. The first one is fixed a bug that allowed removed users to retain access to the organization. This is a horrifying one. So basically, you would remove the user from your organization, and they would still have access to your organization. Not great. Their response was good, though. It went through their security team because this is a security nightmare. It also wasn't swept under the carpet, and it was remediated. So, yes, good job. But if this is you, that's rough. That's rough. All right. I don't have anything else to say on it other than GitHub is not Cloudflare. If it was Cloudflare, see this? This would be the intro statement to 6 more pages of information. That's like the worst Cloudflare. I even called Cloudflare out once, and somebody was like, Merrick, that was like 2 pages on the information. And I was like, yeah, but I'm accustomed to Cloudflare giving us everything. And giving us details on how it was exploited and how you could exploit it and how they came to the fix and all these things. This was, we've addressed the underlying issue and the need for the previously implemented manual effects. We have also cleaned up any user that were not removed when they should have been. There is no further action required by any organization. Okay, cool. Could we know a little bit more? Could we? Please? Pretty please? Anyways, nope. You're not allowed to, because they introduced markdown helpers powered by /commands. I think this is really cool. I always struggle with, every markdown renderer does it a little differently. Not even joking. And knowing which one you're dealing with helps. But check this out. In your PRs, in your commit messages, in all of those things, it looks like they have made these really nice slash commands that are going to really let you do some pretty fast markdown really quickly. So you can just, well, I'll just let this run for a little while. But like, I think that this is pretty good. I think that this is going to make us write some more. Let us write some more nice looking and easily to consume messages, especially when it's some of the long ones, which I know that this affects open source more than it does closed source. When you're using issues to elaborate on things, I think that this really might be a nice bonus, a nice benefit to people. So I was excited about this. All right. Are we ready for some more open source? We have some articles, we have some stuff from around the webs. We do have one thing from Cloudflare. We should cover that now. We'll cover the Cloudflare thing, then we'll move on. These are just articles, things companies did, software engineering in general. Yeah, this is kind of the random portion of the show. Let's talk about no hassle migration from Zscaler to Cloudflare with the 1Dscaler program. This interested me, and one of the reasons is it seems like it's actually a lot of work. So basically, you have to have like 1,000 employees or more to be eligible to participate. It's not like a technology they released. It's like a program that they released, and it has everything from architecture workshops, technical mitigation tools, migration tools, and like toolkits and engagements and things like that. So yeah, it almost seems more of like a business partner program to help large companies, like I said, over 1,000 employees, to migrate to these things. So, yeah, it was interesting. It was not what I expected from Cloudflare, to be honest. But I mean, they have these things. But if that's you, if you are in a large company and need to weigh in on these types of things, I do like Cloudflare. So that if you have been locked into the Zscaler, aren't liking it for some reason, I don't know anything about the Zscaler program, so it may be fantastic. And if it is, I'm happy for you. Keep doing it. Keep on going on. Let's talk about PyTorch 2.0. We just started using PyTorch a little bit ago, and we used the 1.13, I think, 1.14, 1.15. It was 1 point something. Big number, too, for a second generation. But PyTorch 2.0 has been released, and we're going to have to download it and try it. So the PyTorch conference was this month, last month, this month. No, it's March. Last month. It was middle of last month. Or it was in December of last year. But it has finally come out to be released. I know that there was some talk about it, but it's finally out there for us to use. And it seems like there's a lot of cool things. Now, I know that OpenAI uses PyTorch. They switched from something else. I forget what it was. I really like MXNet as well. I'm kind of a sucker for MXNet. Just because, so one of the things I like doing computing at scale, and so like I think that MXNet scales much better than any of the other ones, and it does some really cool things with how it distributes its workloads, which I find I get really nerdy about that. But I think PyTorch is by far the easier to use. That's so far. All right. So yeah, it was. I think maybe it was a beta in the conference, and now it's released in stable. I think that's what it is. All right. Anyways, we'll just touch on some of the stuff. Here are the PyTorch 2 transformers, and is the only thing in stable at this point. but it has a bunch of stuff in beta that is looking pretty cool. There's a good summary here. I'm going to drop this in case you guys want to dig into it. If you want to get a little bit excited about that. Yeah, and they have almost 500 contributors. So that's actually pretty awesome. So the other thing that I noticed here, which was kind of cool, was that it looks like PyTorch 2.0 tried to be 100% backwards compatible. So like their brand new compiler that they released, the torch.compiler, which looks to be really awesome, is backwards compatible. I think that this is something people don't understand. I know that the cloud has a tendency of just moving forward and breaking things. It's really nice to see some people putting effort in that backwards compatibility. It's actually usually a lot more work to bring that. So I really like that. This one I found interesting. This metal performance shaders. It brings GPU accelerated PyTorch training on Mac platforms with added support for the top 60 most used ops. So this is interesting because I know that people have struggled to leverage the Metal API for the Apple Silicon. And so maybe this is one of those good. I know that we were talking the other week about that orchestrator that uses Macs and now supports AWS Macs, so you can orchestrate Macs in AWS, and we were like, who would actually do that? I don't know what type of performance this gives. I think that would be a really good test of like, hey, we have a $10,000 of NVIDIA GPUs and $10,000 of Mac GPUs. Which one trains faster and better? I don't know. So the other one here was this Amazon S3 optimizes the PyTorch CPU interface on AWS Graviton 3 based C7G instances. You know that I am a sucker for the C7G instances. And so like I'm absolutely interested in this and what it actually means. They were a little loose on numbers here, but yeah. So anyways, I'm excited. I'm excited. Smaller is better. That is not something you hear said very often. I'm sorry. We're moving on. Check it out if you want. I put a link in the description or in the chat. Docker apologizes again. So, I think this is good. Docker PR or whoever keeps stepping on their own feet. I feel like I actually like Docker. I know that a lot of people really dislike Docker. They have had a rough time for how transformative they are to the web. Docker is what brought us Kubernetes. It's what powered Kubernetes for the longest of time. They did a lot for the community, and they never got the credit I think they deserved. That's going to be my hot take on that. They never got the credit that they deserved. But they also have done stupid stuff, which has made it easy to hate them. It's just made it easy. They have not given themselves any thing. So they came out with a really poor launch of, we apologize for how we communicated and executed sunsetting Docker free team subscriptions, which alarmed the open source community. Now, it comes out that it wasn't actually a ton of users that were using this, and it doesn't affect Docker Personal, Docker Pro, Docker Team, or Docker Business Account, or Docker sponsored open source members, Docker verified publishers, or Docker official. It changed a very small group of people, and they have alternatives out there. It was just communicated really, really poorly. Again, this is something that they're classically done. Yeah. So they then went through, and this is a pretty good FAQ. If you had questions on it, here, I'm going to drop this link in there in the chat as well. Go for it. they have a pretty good FAQ. Are they going to delete open source images? And no, they're not going to. If you run an open source project, they tell you how to apply for the open source. What if I publish a Docker official image or a Docker verified? Those aren't affected by the change. You could go through and read all of these. I think it wasn't a big deal, but how they did it was a big deal. That's the problem. Again. All right. The Great Computing Stagnation. All right. This was done on this is a blog. And I think I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. They go through. I loved seeing these charts because these charts are interesting because you can see like how different things, and they're talking about hardware here. You can see how the different things have been affected. So, you have your frequency that's affected, you have your single thread performance, you have your transistors, the number of transistors, and you have the typical power in watts as well as the number of logical cores. It's interesting, this line was flat for the longest of time, and then we've seen some. But it's also interesting, like, I think that this one is also almost this logarithmic curve. Like, there's an upper limit that you hit, and then it just goes flat again. We might even see something like that with transistors, where it goes up and then levels out somewhere. I don't know that will happen. It's interesting because this is what's powering. This right here is what's powering the ability to be faster, really. And some of it is also the logical number of cores. But I watched a lot of stuff on high performance computing, and one of the things that you can do is like doing one addition problem or doing 8 addition problems actually is the exact same cost in cycles to the CPU. So if you do one addition, you're actually wasting 7 other additions if you knew you needed to do them, because it does all of those computations in one go. So we're not going to get into that. Maybe I'll do some videos on processors, maybe when I'm a little bit bigger of a YouTuber, because I think I would really need to interview some guests for that. It's interesting how we are as performant as we are. So then there's so it goes into some more stuff. I think that this is really cool. I think you should read it. I'm gonna post it. It was a great little blog. Yep, read it. We don't need to read that one. I like that one. You guys are not C++ or C and C++ developers. I don't know that there's anyone on my stream or YouTube channel that does C or C++. So we won't talk about this, but we will talk about how assert isn't necessarily free. So if you sprinkle assert in, it might get expensive. Now, one thing that he does clarify in this, and I actually love Daniel Lemier's blog, is that it's not a single assert, but it's when you're doing it in a loop. Basically, if you're going to hit it a lot, it can get expensive, because this is actually doing quite a bit of things here that have to be done to satisfy this assert, especially since you're asserting with an indexed value. You have the lookup for that, and it can actually become expensive if that's what you're doing. So yeah, anyways, runtime asserts are not free. It's a thing to think about. I know that I think about performance maybe a little bit more than some, and yeah, that's always something you have to think about. GPT-4 has been released. I need you guys to sign a petition to get me through the API waitlist. I have joined the API waitlist, haven't gotten accepted yet, but when I do, you can be assured that this will be updated. Instead of GPT 3.5, which is commonly known as ChatGPT, it will be using GPT-4. Unless if you guys decide that you want it to be using Google, or I would love it to be using Llama, and maybe even like a Llama WeCompile. that's maybe like tailored to the community a little bit. I think that would be really cool. But we'll see. We'll see. Otherwise, I'm waiting on this. Another thing that I read that I'm going to put was this interview with OpenAI's founder, co-founder thingy. Person in charge. OpenAI's co-founder on company's past approach to openly sharing research. We were wrong. What are you guys' thoughts? Were they wrong? Should they? So the big thing here is GPT-4 is not an open AI model, contrary to their name being OpenAI. Now, I know that they used to release a lot of how they train the stuff and whatnot, and they've stopped doing that. And there's a lot of speculation about why they stopped doing that and whatnot. And to be honest, I don't know. I don't know that I agree one way or another on why. You know, but yeah, they don't share that information anymore. A lot of people are worried about the impact on it. Like, uh, another reason suggested by some OpenAI to hide details of GPT-4's construction is legal liability. AI language models need to be trained on huge text data sets, with many, including earlier GPT systems, scraping information from the web, a source that likely includes material protected by copyright. And AI image generators are also trained on content from the internet, have found themselves facing legal challenges for exactly this reason, with several firms currently being sued by independent artists and stock photo sites Getty Images. So some are saying it could be because they don't want to be sued. I'm interested in how this unfolds, because I really think that it will have a profound effect on these types of AIs, that are trained on certain things, and the legal precedents that are going to be set. Because I think the legal precedents that are set in the next couple of years are going to completely shape. It's not the technology that's going to shape the future. It's going to be the laws that shape the technology. If that doesn't make sense to you, think about the internet. And think about who's liable for what you say on the internet. If you go on a forum and say something bad, is it the company that hosts the forum or you that get in trouble? And this has been something. The laws surrounding that has been something that has shaped the internet for since its inception. And I think we're in another era where the laws set down for this is going to shape the next 50 years of the technology. It's going to shape how the technology is developed, how it performs, and how people can use it and leverage it. So I think those laws are more interesting and more impactful to AI than the actual technology we call AI. Again, I don't like the word artificial intelligence. I can get into why that's a stupid name, but I think that's the bigger deal, the more important deal right there. Another day, another crypto getting exploited for $200 million. When will this stop? When people stop using crypto. Yeah, it keeps happening. It keeps happening. So let's move on. No need to talk about it. Who knew C++ compiler was needed for the web? Well, chirp. That's actually kind of fun to say. I like that. Good name. Chirp 3.0, the most advanced C++ compiler for the web, now permissively licensed. The big deal is that Chirp 3.0 came out. Before this, it was Chirp 2.7. And the newest release is out. All right. Originally, it was a GPL v2, and now it is fully open source as the Apache 2 license. Now, I will repeat again, I don't know who writes C++ for the web. But if that is you, chirp is there for you. I still don't know how to put chirp in a normal sentence because I almost have to pause after saying it, but it is still extremely fun to say. And yeah, I'm excited about this just because it's a bunch of fun to say. So go give chirp a try. All right. They said this had nothing to do with the banks, with the economy as a whole, or anything like that. But Y Combinator has made some changes. And these I only bring these up because we're talking about the recession some. We're watching it. We're following it. It's primarily known as a very early founders incubator. But it had a mid to late term group that it did. And basically it's sunsetting that. So yeah, Y Combinator is rightly known for early stage investing. In recent years, we have also done some late stage investing, but late stage investing turned out to be so different from early stage that we found it to be a distraction from our core mission. So we're going to decrease the amount of late stage investing we do. It means they're laying off people as well because they don't need them. There shouldn't be any noticeable effect on the companies we founded or on the way we interact with alumni. But if any companies or alumni have questions, blah, blah, blah. So, anyways, they then released a follow-up that said it wasn't because of the economy. It wasn't about anything other than that it was more of a distraction, and I'm going to take that they weren't good at it necessarily. So anyways, yeah, that's a thing to be looking for. And the last, but definitely not least, bringing Rust to the Zen project. I don't know if it's pronounced Zen. I pronounce it Zen. That's how I pronounce it. It's a virtualization technology, much like my beloved KVM, but it's one of the big open source projects for one of the big virtualization open source projects. And this platform is a mix of various languages like C, Python, OCaml, and even Go. Some components are somehow old and not easily maintainable, and we wanted the opportunity to rethink some of them and use the opportunity to bring Rust to the table. So basically, for some of their older C code and Go or Python code, they're starting to migrate these things to Rust because it's memory safety. One thing with a hypervisor is you need memory safety, and so this I think makes tons of sense, just tons of it. Memory safety and performance. Let's redo that. So yeah, that's it. That's it for me today. If you'd like to make the most awesome Twitch events, if you'd like to work on an open source project like Assembly Line, join me on the weekdays. Join me on Saturday. That's what we're doing. We're having fun. I got my butt kicked by Rust on Saturday. Yeah, yesterday. It was painful. I felt down in the dumps. I felt like I was a horrible software engineer, which, to be fair, I don't always write the most amount of code. It's not always been my job to be, elbows deep in code. And so it was good. It was good for me. I have learned so much in the last 12 hours from the embarrassment of getting my butt kicked live on stream Saturday. It was good. I've never written a future before. I mean, I've used futures, never written my own. Is probably the bigger deal. So that was great learning experience, and we're gonna learn some more. So feel free to join me. All right. Well, I look forward to hanging out with you guys again next week. And with that being said, have yourselves a fantastic week.